Lakeport and all around our beautiful lake.
KPFZ would like to thank People Pleasin' Preserves for their generous support of community radio. People Pleasin' Preserves provides jams, butters, and marmalades made from overflow fruit from local farmers. They also provide baked goods to order and menu consultation. People Pleasin' Preserves products are available at Wildhurst Tasting Room, Cache Creek Vineyard Tasting Room, the Lake County Wine Studio, the Featherbed Railroad, and Vintage Antiques. People Pleasin' Preserves can be reached at 707-245-3883. Call to make an appointment to visit their facility.
All right, we're going to do the ritual who let the dogs out.
Oh, no. One more thing. Save the date. Saturday, October 15th. KPFZ's Blues and Barbecue is happening at the Finley Grange from doors open at 4 p.m. until, featuring KPFZ's own Herb Gura and Without a Net. Also, Levi Lloyd and the 501 Band. Also, Wendy DeWitt barbecue dinner or a vegetarian lasagna dinner. Tickets will be $30. If you're a KPFZ member, they're $28. You're going to be able to buy your tickets from your favorite programmer here at KPFZ, so keep that in mind. We'll give you more information. All right.
Sometimes I wonder just what I'm gonna do. Here in my, here in my, here in my, here in my heart. Here in my, here in my, here in my heart. Every flower, every blade of grass.
Well, welcome back, everyone. And today, I will bring my guest on. And welcome, Alicia.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
I am just peachy.
Awesome.
I'm trying to get this volume up, and I know that my voice is really deep and it's sometimes really hard to hear, so I am potting that volume up. Before we
It's
get
a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And before we proceed, I'd like to give the audience a little bit about you. Alicia Nicole Waters is a cross-industries entrepreneur. Is very passionate about bringing her total essence to the world through cross-pollinating her gifts throughout diverse industries. Some of her primary roles that she serves are in a media communications mentor, cross-industries brand specialist, cross-niche journalist, and speaker for diverse industries. She is a multimedia personality and has published over 100 books and is also an ordained minister. She is the CEO of Global Trinity Enterprises, which includes Alicia Waters Cross Industries International, Global Evolutionary Leaps, and Many Ways to Abundant Publishing. And she shows up the world as a total me empire, demonstrating how she uses all her experiences to serve various venues. And she is the founder of the multimedia ministry, the Evolutionary Kingdom of Truth International. So welcome, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Susan. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you and your community of listeners today.
I do have to have a little reminder here, just for Lake County Community Radio, and that's that and the opinions expressed on this and any other KPFC programs or the opinion of the speakers. I always include myself in there, and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of KPFC, Lake County Community Radio, its member staff, or supporters, and these are the opinions and views of the speakers only. Now, I know that we as I always try to do, is have a nice little phone conversation with those coming on my show. And so Alicia and I had about a 2-hour conversation as to what we would like to share. And we ended up with, life is like a university.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to go to the very beginning of when you were a child and what steps you took to arrive at your current destination.
Wow, no, that certainly is a story and a journey that probably could take up the whole hour of the show. But to give a condensed version, as a child, I was always very, very passionate about performing arts. I loved to write. I loved to sing, but singing was my number one passion and focus. And anything that involved being a part of the media, being able to express myself through arts, through acting, was something that I was always very connected to.
I'm getting an impression that you were not a shy child like me.
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. There are parts of me that are very introverted, but it's like whenever I'm ready to be on stage or perform or talk, then that part of me comes out. But when I'm by myself, I'm really reserved, and sometimes I'm, an introvert. But it's like during those times when it's actually time to really show up, then that's when that part of me seems to come forth. So as a child, I've never been a stranger to conversation, so to speak. I could talk pretty much about any and everything, and sometimes probably talked a little too much, according to my parents. But as time evolved, I learned how to sort of master that, to be able to show up at the right time, to say the right things at the right time, and not allow those conversations, so to speak, to not play to my highest advantage. So as I mentioned, I was always very passionate about that, and I loved, again, anything that dealt with performing. I was in the chorus, I was in the band, I performed with Six Flags over Georgia occasionally. I was very involved in the 4-H club, if any are familiar with that. And so I got a lot of experience with performing, but with doing a whole lot of different things. And I think that it played to my advantage as I was getting older, that I was really involved heavily in several things. And I think that that is a great connection or a divine link to me being able to serve multiple industries just through a lot of areas of my life.
You have published some of your articles on Amazon, is that correct? Or where are they that they can be read?
Oh, my publications, yes, they're all on Amazon, and it's over 100 publications on Amazon. And actually, people can go directly to my author's page, which I can share that at the end of the show if you would like.
Okay. So what was your first area of writing and expertise about before blending all as you evolved along to be able to write that many articles?
To write that many books? Yeah, no, this is interesting. I had written several stories and other publications, but actually my first one to be published was a book that was called Abundance You Are It, Inner Game Mastery for Emerging Leaders. And that book was published in 2012, June of 2012. And that book actually sort of derived or was inspired by my journey of discovering my inner abundance and being able to connect to that through a lot of, let's say, seasons of struggles, dark nights of the soul, really trying to figure out what was it like to really be truly an abundant being. You have so many different teachings but people actually discovering that for themselves and finding out what that means for them. I went on the journey, and then the book was birthed out of that. And actually, prior to birthing that book, I launched a service that was called Mini, M-I-N-I, Ways to Abundance. And it had products that were developed to help individuals connect to their inner abundance, because abundance is a very layered topic. That's a very, very layered topic. And a lot of times it's misunderstood because people seem to link that with financial prosperity or, wealth in a certain way. But really, it's a holistic perspective and a holistic lifestyle. You can be abundant in gratitude. You can be abundant in faith. There are many areas that you can really be abundant in, and being able to connect to all of those areas of your truth of abundance, I believe once you connect to those, then some of the external things that you really want and desire, they start showing up. But for me, it certainly was a difficult, and I don't want to say difficult because it's all a matter of perception, and we're going to talk about that. But at the time, it definitely seemed like I was being pressed to unleash this inner abundance. And for the longest, that did not show up in tangible material ways. But what it did teach me was about embracing all of the important aspects of life, that we really need to find abundance in those areas first. And then once we find abundance in those areas, then a lot of all the other things are added to us.
Well, there is a book I read, and I reread it every once in a while when I take excerpts from it, by Marcy Sminoff.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is Happy for No Reason.
Yeah.
And some of the research that they've done, they've actually found that wealth is not the major thing that makes a person happy.
That's right.
What makes a person feel more supported, I would say, and less fearful of life are those who have sufficient fund to pay their bills and maybe a little bit in savings in case a disaster happens. And those who are stressed by financially are those that are down on that are earning less than what we consider, an adequate amount to cover their bills with no savings, so they're constantly worried. And actually, that's one of the reasons for depression is long-term lack of work and or long-term lack of funds to cover one's bills.
Right.
But that's what I mean. But abundance, actually, in the major goal of every human being is joy, to find happiness in their lives.
Absolutely.
And usually the link that brings that is to love.
I agree wholeheartedly. I totally agree with that. And, since today we're going to be talking about life is like a university and having, a conversation around those dynamics, the abundant life or the wealthy life or a life of wholeness, so to speak, is really all about being connected to life itself and changing our perception of how we see our lives and how we see ourselves. And when we look at it from the perspective that life truly is like a university, then we see that we're here to evolve. Each of us are here to serve a purpose, for sure, evolve our soul's highest intention, and also to really learn, Susan, about how to become more like the source in which we spring forth from. That's really the whole intention. And when we start learning how to really collapse the illusion of having some type of arrival or an ultimate arrival, we start realizing that life is really all about a journey, and it's not about just the destination. Each time we're here, whether you believe in life, past lives, or we continue on, if we go from that perspective, each time we're here, we're on a continuum of advancing the higher will of the divine purpose. And so I believe that each time we have a soul's curriculum at every phase that we are here to master in order to advance our higher potential. And if we liken this to school or to college, we normally choose a major or a double major or a minor or concentration or so with that, most of the times we have a core curriculum and like a few electives, and then the curriculum also for like the selected areas of our concentration. So even if we don't stick to that major and we change it, because that happens often when people are in college or they're in school, they'll start off on a major and then they'll change it. So even if someone doesn't stick to that major and they change it during the process, they'll still be working on the core curriculum that is required normally by every student for a particular degree, no matter what the concentration is. The college typically has a core curriculum, English, math, science, so that everyone must complete. So even if you haven't figured out what you want to do in life or what your life purpose is, then all of life as a university is really teaching you the core curriculums of what is going to be required in order for you to start evolving. And then out of that, what happens is that your greater purpose emerges. And I also want to say that, occasionally we can do what I call, Susan, life clepping. And it's likened this to how students are able to take, what's the test? The CLEP test. And they CLEP out of a course. I believe that there are times where the universe will take into account that maybe we've prepared for something or we've mastered a certain aspect of life, maybe in a nonlinear way. So then it gives us credit to sort of advance to the next level. And each season or each new season or so of our evolution, we're given a life school syllabus with the curriculum that's going to be laid out, and it's really going to be up to us, just like in college, get all the materials and the supplies that we need in order to complete those requirements. So it's also going to be up to us to start establishing effective discipline systems for accomplishing whatever the endeavors are that we have during this season or semester of life, if you will. And that also includes that sometimes we have to enroll the right help. Whenever you need help and assistance with something that you don't understand in life or how to make the proper shifts and make the proper transitions, maybe a mentor comes along and helps you, or you find resources, or you enroll in a program. And these things will help to assist us in life, because life is like a university.
I'm going to step in a minute.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to invite you. I know you agree with that to a certain extent.
Well, I was jumping all the way back to the way, a really easy way of looking at things in the manner of which you're speaking is, well, one very old cliche is to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And of course, looking at it exponentially, you're looking at mindfulness. I have to laugh because sometimes I'll get focused on something that I have in my mind that I have to do, and right there I just focused on that, and I'll be walking along, and the same thing that I know 100 times is there, I'll trip on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a board in my deck that's out, and when I'm in a hurry, I trip on that. And it's like a reminder, that if to remain with a mindfulness means that you still have your goal in mind, but you're seeing 360 degrees as well around you to maybe notice something that might grab your attention for a moment that is required for you to continue that journey that you're focused on.
Absolutely. I am so glad you said that, because that really takes me to focusing on something I really love to talk about, because I've had to do so much of this, and that is about being present and learning how to really master and maximize the power of the present moment. And so when we go through life, we have to learn how to be present with the journey, and sometimes that's why we don't need to get confused or misinterpret even the contrast presence that presents itself to us, the different life challenges that we interpret them as life challenges, rather. When we get present, we start understanding and get the awareness of how all of life is serving us. And just like you were mentioning, if we don't slow down and get the wisdom that's needed during a certain part of our journey, we'll continue to start moving on, and then we wonder why when we get to a certain point we're backtracking again, or we don't understand how to take our lives to the next level. And often it's because we weren't present during our journey to get the nuggets, to get the wisdom. And going back to life being like a university, because it's all here to teach us, and sometimes we have to take seasons or semesters in life, so to speak, where we major in mastering the present moment and living a life of being present, because each season of our lives is going to be very different and definitely will present new challenges or sometimes opportunities, but it's all about growth and fulfillment and then the completions. And that's why I say that we should each be determining what courses or life electives, so to speak, that we need to enroll in for the University of Life for our now season and for our next season. So what you were saying, I mean, that's so profound and that's so on point.
Well, you're listening to KPFC 88.1 FM, commercial-free radio, and we are supported by your pledges, so keep those coming in. This is Alicia Waters is my guest, and my name is Susan King, and the show is called Big Heart. I would have to say sometimes, too, like, for an example, I took a course in real estate when I worked for Wells Fargo Bank way back in the 70s. I hate to say that, but I worked as an escrow specialist for Wells Fargo, and I hated the job. It was like, oh, Lord, how can anyone stand this dry data that's coming through here? And then several years later, I got my real estate license, and it was because my perspective had changed about the material that I was learning, and I began to understand there was so much more to it. And it became very interesting because I got to learn how communities are built, subdivisions and houses and contractors and meets and bounds and all of these other things that we have no clue how, to start a piece of land out there, and all of a sudden you've got houses in a town. How does that happen?
Right.
So that part of it, looking from a slightly different perspective, made it interesting. And sometimes we're just not ready. And it is true. We have these different stages, like childhood, teenager, young adult, preparing for lives and marriage and children, school. And then you get into a part of your life where all of that comes into fruition, what you use or don't use. And that's sometimes where, like in my 30s, that I actually took a breather and said, okay. And other things started to pop out that I found interesting. And that's where I find that life becomes a university, is when there are so many other things out there that blend together to make something.
Absolutely. It's just one big, wonderful tapestry, at the end of the day, when all of the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, assimilate, for the bigger picture. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that in this conversation. But I love where you were just going with that. And it actually, too, takes me back to what you were asking in terms of me and the publishing of so many books, and stemming from the first book and how the other ones sort of evolved, or I began writing. Using all of my life is how I show up as the Total Me Empires, because that is the Total Me mastered energy. Doesn't mean I'm a master at certain levels of different things, but learning how to connect to life and use all of life. So that's one of the ways I'm able to serve a variety of industries, because I write from my life's experiences, and I've had to master certain areas, and the way that we evolve is totally nonlinear, where sometimes you're not going to be trained formally by a certain aspect, but in life you'll somehow get that lesson enough that it maximizes even above a degree. And I have plenty of those, but I actually don't even like to talk more so about my degrees. I talk from my life, because people want to hear practical stories and make a connection to people who actually have been through certain things, or they're expressing their passions. Everything that we show up in life, like speakers, teachers, however, it's not just always about the pain and what we've overcome, but what are some of the things in life that you have always been really great at or just passionate about? Write about that, because people also want to hear about those stories as well, of, what you've been doing that you continue to do, very well. But life being like a university, life is calling us to learn so that we can utilize all of it, not necessarily always in a professional way, but there could be an aspect of your life that you really needed to grow and evolve in, because the person at the grocery store might need encouragement or might need to hear your story. It's not necessarily that always it's going to be shared on a big stage or even published in a book. But when we're connected to life and all the purpose of life and bringing purpose to everything, because honestly, Susan, that's what it's about, is a purpose-filled life is not just about fulfilling a life purpose and reaching goals. It's about being connected to all of life and bringing purpose to everything. When you sit in a chair, I like to use this as an example, you're bringing purpose to that chair. You know why? It was someone's purpose. Someone had that idea in their mind to create that. And then as time evolved, other people began to advance that purpose. So everything that we do, whether we're writing, we're bringing purpose to someone else's purpose. We're bringing purpose to pen, bringing purpose to paper. And I know that may sound very simplistic, very basic, but sometimes it's those subtle things that really awaken us to maybe life is not just about fulfilling some mission in a certain way. Maybe every single aspect of life is about being connected, bringing purpose to it. And I actually want to say something in reference to what you were talking about earlier, about sometimes we go through certain phases of life where we don't understand, like with you taking the real estate course, but we learn so much. And sometimes there can be a little bit of resistance, not always, but sometimes there can be. So if someone's going through resistance training in life, because life is not only like a university, life is also like a workout at times. And that's part of our life's curriculum, too. So often we might have some resistance training from life, the circumstances or the contrast present. But when we start understanding again that our life is like a university, and we understand, too, that sometimes life is like a workout, when we start looking at it from this perspective, I believe that we make transitions through life much easier. And when we begin to see that it's like a required course for our life's curriculum, we start also seeing the benefits of how the process really serves our overall well-being of our journey, even when it's not always fun in the process, But it gives us an opportunity to evolve our perception. And life is always about a matter of perspective. Go ahead.
I think they need to revamp our school systems and how they are, how the courses are taught.
I agree.
I think that many of the classes that we take, are beneficial. They are,
yes.
They teach us many different aspects about the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, there was classes that I sat there and it's like, why? One of my worst, you'll laugh at me, one of the worst classes I ever have, and I've tried it twice in college, and it's repulsive to me.
Yeah.
It's political science. I can't stand political science. When I read it, to me, every government official that runs, there's corruption everywhere. So they don't really tell the truth, and that's my perception. Now, could it change possibly if the more I understand about how government runs and all the little footsteps that everyone has to go to, and all of the different people who are in control of this department, that department, this, to me, it's just like a huge big nothing out there but confusion. But I think that if they did take those basic things that we need to know about and teach us how to live in the world, and then give us the one thing that we are passionate about to evolve in, and let us spend the most time on that topic, I think we would have.
I agree wholeheartedly.
A much better world out there.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because actually, I don't even like to call it homeschooling or unschooling. It's because life is like a university. But I have a platform which my children have come under, and it's called Divine Path Academics. And it services, I have products that service the homeschool preparing them for the world that they have to play in, not the one that everyone says that you have to play in. Sure, there are things that you have to know, things that you need to know, but being able to be connected to what is their life curriculum that's going to serve them the best for the path that they're here to be on. So go ahead.
I know there's probably a lot of children who don't even know how to balance a checkbook, what it takes to run a household.
Right, exactly.
What you need to be looking forward to when you have children. How to do
Exactly.
parenting.
I agree.
These kind of
Yes.
courses are something that, just teaches us about life and how to live life.
Right.
In
And those
in
are
our
the things we
environment.
focus on. Yeah, and we focus on things like that. We've recently actually started opening this up for adults as well, and not just for unschooling or homeschooling children, but for anybody. Taking my 100 plus books, which of course are going to continue. It won't stop there. There are various platforms where I'm now starting to incorporate reading programs for adults and repositioning and repurposing those so that people can, start to read about the things that they need to learn about life itself and be connected, whether it's in business, whether it's in lifestyle, health, wellness, just whatever, and start to really recreate the world that they were here originally to create. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, our soul's curriculum sometimes requires us to take certain things, but being here to really learn how to be more like the source in which we spring forth from, then we begin to hear from source's definition and perspective what our path is supposed to be in this lifetime. So with that comes learning all of the things that we need to know. And just like you mentioned, how children aren't necessarily taught in school the basics of money, how to manage. They have different camps and things that people, that children are taught. But when we can make camps into part of everyday curriculum and just learning from life, all of life, is a school. And going back to perception and switching our perception and reinterpreting life and seeing it like a university actually sort of takes the, I don't want to say the pressure off, I can't find the word right now, but it changes the whole tone of how we show up. And so going back to working out, people who are passionate about staying fit or they understand the importance, they have a different mindset about working out than those that don't. And most who are not disciplined will see it as it's hard, it's too much to be consistent. When they hit a plateau, they just give up because they don't see a way that they can advance. Again, it's all about perception. But those who understand the true purpose of working out or being fit, being healthy, they always seem to find a way to get the results, maintain them, or up-level those results. They'll learn how to cross-train, so they'll get to the next level. And in life, we have to sometimes cross-train our essence because it is a part of our life's curriculum. But we're here to evolve, and we have to start seeing life very differently if, in fact, we want to live to our highest expression. So sometimes it's time for us to discover new ways so we can start to cross-train our essence when we feel that, we're stuck. But I truly believe that once we connect to the benefits, so to speak, of living a healthy lifestyle or a lifestyle of wholeness, if you will, we see all of our experiences with new eyes. And at the end of the day, things always seem to work out for our good as we're up-leveling our soul's expansion. So how many times have you had a situation to happen where it was really hard, it was really challenging, but at the end of the day, something great came from it?
I have to say that it isn't ever something huge that has to be accomplished in order for me to get that end result.
Yeah.
It can be something minor for me, and it's like, whoa, I didn't see it in that way. Well, now I do. Well, no wonder I
Yeah.
was stumbling around because I didn't see
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in this perspective.
Right.
I used to beat myself up. It's like, wow, what a stupid person. Why didn't you recognize that before? Now I don't do that. It's like, oh, okay. I guess I wasn't ready to receive the information yet, but now I have it. I know what to do with it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
again, you're listening to KPFC 88.1 FM, commercial free radio. Um, going, I think there's, I was kept getting these different pictures as you were talking.
Uh-oh.
And of course, well, one of them is like, when you were talking about life, and I was thinking
Yeah.
about how these beautiful Tibetan monks create these
Mhm.
absolutely spectacular mandalas from
Yeah.
sand. They spend hours, days, and months on them, and when they're done, they simply destroy them and start all over again.
Right. Mhm.
And basically, it's starting something new. It's the same thing, but it's seeing a different thing unfold.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and sometimes it takes that moving forward or moving backwards, and looking at something again to
Yeah.
say maybe I didn't. I think one of the courses that I took in college,
Mhm.
and it opened my eyes more than any other course that I've ever had, but I wasn't prepared to take that course
Yeah.
at any other time than when I took it, and that was anthropology.
Yes. Yes.
That is definitely an eye-opening course. Even if
Mhm.
I've never traveled around the world as my father has, my sister has. I've been to Mexico and the United States.
Mhm.
That's about the extent of my travels. And yet, through anthropology, I saw so many different cultures and so many different
Mhm.
ways and realized that, our thought patterns are definitely culturally influenced.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
no matter where we end up, why didn't I end up in another country? Why was I not born there? So all of these questions come up in my mind. And maybe I had lived in that country in a previous
Yeah,
life.
another time. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Right.
And
Yeah, very, very powerful. Life is so layered, but yet it's so simplistic. And really, when we take all of the hardship or complications out of what can be really just subtle ways that we see that life is here to serve us, and it is here for our enjoyment. And even though we are here evolving, like I said, sometimes that evolutionary process can really seem like what's happening here, what's taking place. But life, or the journey, so to speak, is really here to evolve us to be a whole entire different entity of ourselves. I think that's what happens at every phase. I do a lot of metaphoric teaching and live my life very metaphorically. A lot of my work stem around the metaphors and using the phoenix, the butterfly, the bumblebee, the frog. I use a lot of that in my teachings, because what I've learned is that the way we grow sometimes are in those different phases. Sometimes you'll be in a phoenix phase where, as you mentioned about the monks, where they'll create this beautiful masterpiece, so to speak, and then, tear it up. Well, the phoenix, metaphorically, the mythical bird, burns itself up, and then it rises again from its ashes. And in life, we have those experiences where, maybe not on purpose, so to speak, but we have seasons in our lives where it seems like everything just, burned up. And sometimes I believe that it needed to, so that we could reemerge into a higher expression. With the butterfly going from the caterpillar status to a butterfly, every caterpillar, rather, is encoded with the DNA to be a butterfly. But they go through that transition of death to that former way of being, and then they emerge to a completely, totally different entity. We, in life, in our university process, sometimes we go through the human cocoon experience, that I call it, so that we emerge to a higher, authentic expression of being what I call divine human butterflies. And then even with our life transition, sometimes as a frog, as we take our leaps or our evolutionary leaps in life, sometimes it's not about going through hardship. Frogs, they have a transformational process that sometimes happens pretty quickly or quantumly. They go from a tadpole to the frog, and then they're, fully grown. And if you look at some of the Disney movies, it's like the Princess Frog, and they have different, names for that now. But that one kiss from transforming a frog into a prince or vice versa, a princess, sometimes we have those experiences where we have evolutionary processes that happen pretty quick for us in our transformation. But before that, there's been a journey. But at some point in that journey, it all comes together, and it's like that one subtle thing or that kiss from life that just transforms you into something completely different. So those are really three phases that I think in the University of Life that we each go through at different times. Metaphorically, I was mentioning I like to use the bumblebee because I'm a cross-pollinator, so I go from, like a bee, go from plant to plant, suck the nectar out, and I cross-pollinated in the world. And that's how I use my giftings to be able to serve a variety of industries. But being connected to life and to life itself is what allows us to really see the greater growth and expansion of who we are, and then how we can use that in our everyday lives, whether it's on a big stage, whether, like I said, it's in a book, it's in an article, or just simply in a grocery store.
I find sometimes when I have an answer or a question that I need an answer to, I just simply throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where that answer will come from, and I'll be amazed. I mean, I could be just driving down the road and see a billboard, and that something in that billboard pops out, and I'll go, oh, okay, now I got my answer. Or a TV show, or in a sentence that somebody says something.
Right. Yes, a subtle
and
thing.
And it's very quick sometimes. The answers come fairly quickly. It's amazing how if one allows their mind to just absorb what's going on around them instead of directing themselves into a linear path of thinking.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, because living a nonlinear approach to life is how you find your true connection, because one of the things I've really learned in this journey of life is that life is not linear, but it is circular, for sure. Our journeys have very nonlinear dynamics, and the journey is not always a straight line. And it's interesting that sometimes something we've been preparing for or working on in one season, we don't see the manifestations or the results during that season of life. But in the right season, everything sort of cycles back around, and it comes into full alignment, and then all of the pieces of the puzzle seem to just assimilate into the bigger picture like we were talking about earlier. So as you were talking about how you would drive down the road and you see something on a billboard, or you hear something in a in a sentence, or hear something on television, it's because you are being present to life, whether you are consciously aware of that. But you're not missing the signals or the clues that life is sort of throwing out to you, because you were able to get it and you were able to grasp it, and then that's great. That's why being present, or that should be one of the University of Life requirements in the core curriculum, is definitely learning how to master being present at various phases.
Well,
and again, go ahead.
There is a universal law called the law of cyclicity, which means that I think if we're looking, our lights will go around in a circle, with our friends, our habits, and so forth. But if we're in a mindset that we're seeking our evolution and involvement in our spirituality, you will go in that circle in a more of an upward trend as you learn more, and it fills in the gaps of where you previously didn't have that knowledge.
You're so right. Yes, I definitely agree. We have to love our lives at every phase, even when it's certainly not producing the fruit or the results that we want to see. But again, going back to the perception and how we interpret our lives really plays a huge part in how fast we advance.
Well, if you're
And-
hitting your head against the wall on something, maybe it's not the direction you need to take. I wanted to throw that in there, too,
No,
because that
you're
happens.
exactly right.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes, the door will open when you're ready. Your teacher will appear when the student is ready. The teacher will appear. You just have to recognize it. And the same thing about relationships. I think sometimes we jump into relationships because, wow, that person is really hot, and I want to be with them. Instead of really taking a look back and actually getting to know the person first, and then realizing all of the things that you thought were about this person were not, and now
Exactly.
now you're kind of like disillusioned from what your original perception was.
Right. And I'm so glad you said that, because even on that note, or on that awareness, really knowing yourself, and that right there, I believe, is probably the second, if not the first, course curriculum that we really should start to master. And the reason why I said possibly could be the second, because we do want to make sure that the source of who we spring forth from is the higher priority and the focus there. And then our connection to that is how we learn how to be more like where we're from.
I think Anthony Robbins had, I took his first course, and, when they say to write a list of what your hierarchy is in your life, what do you put first? And, I made the list, and then it's, are you really living that? It's like, ooh, I've got to make some changes. My hierarchy is basically my relationship with my spiritual being,
Yes.
my relationship with self,
Yes.
and then my relationship with my intimate partner, and then my family, and then comes work. And it's sad, and I think it saddens me when I see people who have cell phones and their whole life is evolved on that cell phone. Doesn't matter who's around you, beside you, where you're going, or whatever, is that cell phone dictates everything that you do. And I think that's where our society is running into, because I've seen so many, both young generation and older generation, who have grasped onto that wonderful piece of machinery, but have allowed it now to, and I was a victim of that. My past dictate my life, and now I don't own a cell phone, believe it or not.
Wow.
I don't own one, and I feel that if somebody needs to get a hold of me,
They'll get a hold of you.
They'll get a hold of me.
Yeah.
I will be reached out somehow, some way, and it will be taken care of.
No, yeah, and then, I'm glad you said that, because in your journey in life, or this phase, that's exactly what's required for you, because sometimes we have to know our kryptonite, right? We have to understand some of the things that don't serve us, even if they are good and they're serving someone else wonderfully. But if, in fact, it's kind of being a stumbling block to us, or we haven't learned how to manage that where it could be beneficial in our lives and have the balance with it, then sometimes we, need to not do that for a season, or if ever, if it's working for us.
I think cell phones are a wonderful tool. I think they have a lot of benefit. But when, just like computers, I work on a computer 8 hours a day. And do I wish to be on a computer at night? No.
No.
So when people go, what? You don't have your bank account on your computer, and you don't have this on your computer? It's like, no. I'm on my computer.
How you to live your world.
I live my world, and I'm on that long enough. And then when I'm off, the last thing I want to do is balance my checkbook.
Is be on it, right? Right, and that is a part of, whether it's part of your life curriculum or not, is definitely one of your electives. That's what you've chosen to enroll in. That this season of life, I don't do cell phones, and I don't do banking online.
Well, I guess it's just a matter of, knowing your stress. I guess the purpose of me putting that out there was to know what your stress levels are.
Exactly.
To be aware of what is taking you away from actually living a purposeful life.
Right.
And
Know your
substituting
kryptonite.
it with something else. And so, yeah, you might want to call it know your kryptonite, but it is, as simple as that. It could be even an addiction to a relationships that
Mhm.
take you away from really feeling something because you're obsessed with something that really isn't beneficial in one way or another.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I agree. You know, I'm glad that we are having this conversation because it really just speaks to the way things really are versus the way we've been conditioned to see them. Life is really simple. We really complicate it in so many ways. But I think when we look at life as a university and see it, using all of it as the just ways to teach us. I wanted to say all of life is like a professor to us or an instructor, just helping us along the way. And we're actually learning how to be co-creators in this process, where before it seemed like you were given a life script and you just had to live it out this way, or you don't live it according to this, then God's going to get you. But we are coming into a time where things have evolved, where we're learning how to take dominion and be co-creators of the experience. And that's why when we learn from the University of Life, then we learn what we put into our world, creating our heaven on earth, so to speak. We learn what it is that is going to be beneficial to us and what will not be. And also knowing at what phases, something that's great at this life phase may not serve us at another. So having the understanding and the balance of that, of being able to know your life from a masterful perspective, you know this works for me during this time, this won't work for me during this time, or this won't work at all, and this will be great.
I was just remembering a quote. God, I wish I remembered the guy's name, but reflecting on reincarnation and that he does not believe in hypnosis for this age bracket because they're children. And how many of them, 2,500 cases he's done where the children have been accurate about what their past life has been.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that age, we simply lose contact with those thoughts.
Yeah, the connection, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're like a little masterful open book.
Right.
Absorbed in
And
life, and it's such a wonderful thing. I used to remember this young man to take his daughter when I worked in Palm Springs. I was the manager of their downtown movie theater, and he would take his daughter and let her just walk around. She was just crawling age and touch everything. He didn't care. He wasn't there to catch her. He wasn't there to direct her. He just let her do it. And I said, "That's just a wonderful thing you do." He says, "Yeah, she'll know everything about life. She will have experienced it on her own." And Miss Taggart, Lynn Taggart, believes the same thing of the indigenous people who simply let their children do what they need to do, explore the world, learn on their own, without dominating them and directing them as to how to be. And that's another wonderful teaching experience for us because we learn how to, from the get-go, to be independent and yet interdependent, and that fear is not there to take a few giant steps forward into something you may not even know anything about. And that's what I learned later in life, is just to go in and jump in. I had it as an earlier in life when my father made me do a lot of things that I didn't really care for because I was a girl. I didn't think I should have to do them. But now I find it rewarding because there are so many things I like to dabble in now that were what he taught me.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, your perception around it changed. And yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned about the whole childlike experience, because when we actually approach life from a childlike essence, and not from an immature way or so, because I don't think childlike is always linked to immaturity, so to speak. But when we approach life from a childhood essence and connect back to that part of us that we're so connected to Source in a way that we have to unravel from, as adults, that's where we produce our greatest works. And believe it or not, all of the things that are coming forth in fruition, in my life right now are stemming back from when I was young and being able to connect to that and creating from that place. And that's a lot of what's been birthing and emerging through my experience is connecting back to the things I wanted to do, because sometimes we get away from it, or we get away from the aspects that we wanted to see come to fruition. It doesn't mean that we haven't been doing certain things or achieving certain goals that we wanted to achieve when we were a child, but is it really showing up in the fullness of, your heart's desire that's going to make that inner child just sing? And for me, that's the phase that I'm in life, is all of what's coming forth is really coming forth from my childlike essence, to be able to show up in the world fully. That's connecting to your true power, and also having the faith to be guided by that higher awareness, without being fearful about, the monster in the closet, or we begin to transform that perception too. If there's a monster in the closet, well, this is my story, and what am I choosing to do? Am I going to beat them up or just make them disappear? So being able to be powerful in that. But again, going back to life being like a university, we learn how to transform our fears into our greatest allies. We become alchemists of our experiences. We transform lead into gold. And that's why looking at life from a certain perspective, a certain vantage point, serves us in a way so we understand this is about learning. If I have a challenge that I'm approached with, so to speak.
I have to jump in.
Yes.
We've got 1 minute left.
Yes.
And so I wanted everyone to be aware that you are listening to KPFC 88.1 FM. This is Susan King. The show is called Big Heart. My guest is Alicia Waters. Next week will be Sherry Harris with Big Art. This is a live, you can let me get this straight. You can hear a repeat of the show on Facebook under BigHeartRadio.com, and it will be on podcast. Give it a few weeks before that comes up. And Alicia, how can they reach you if someone wishes to contact you?
Oh, thank you so much, Susan, again, for the opportunity to be here. If anyone wants to reach me, they can reach me at www.aliciawaterscrossindustries.com, and they can also connect with me on Facebook under that same handle. Also, they can find me on Facebook at Alicia Nicole Waters, and if someone wants to just reach out directly, they can send an email to info@aliciawaterscrossindustries.com. Thanks again, Susan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alicia, and we'll have you on again in the future, and namaste. So coming up next is New